In a small coastal village, a stranger arrived with a golden cage. Inside was a rare bird that, every morning, dropped a single silver coin. The stranger didn't sell the bird, instead he gave away its feathers for free. "These feathers bring luck," he whispered to the crowd. People scrambled, pushing each other to grab a free piece of fortune. The next day he returned, but this time he offered exclusive access to watch the bird for just 1 copper coin. Again the villagers flocked, blinded by the silver coin they saw dropping in the cage. They felt they were getting a bargain, seeing a miracle for a fraction of its value. Eventually, the stranger announced he was leaving and would sell the bird to the highest bidder. The village elder, a man who had watched the stranger's hands rather than the bird's beak, noticed something. He saw that every time a silver coin dropped, the stranger's hand was near a hidden lever. The villagers, fueled by the free luck they had received earlier, pooled their life savings to buy the bird. They paid 10,000 gold pieces. The stranger left at midnight. The next morning, the villagers gathered, waiting for their silver. The bird chirped, but the cage stayed empty. There was no lever, and there was no silver. The gift of the feathers was never about luck, it was the hook used to measure their greed. When a deal makes you feel like you've outsmarted the world, remember, the bait is only there to hide the hook. If you can't see what the other person is gaining, they are likely gaining everything you own. Old man Chen sat in the corner of a crowded tea house, sipping his drink while everyone around him shouted about the Bluestone project. A young man, breathless and sweating, leaned in and whispered, "Chen, my cousin works at the city gate." He saw the royal caravan carrying chests of gold toward the Bluestone mines. "It's a guaranteed boom. We have to buy the mining rights now before the news breaks tomorrow." The young man felt like a king, holding a secret that the rest of the world didn't know. He put his house up for collateral that very afternoon to buy into the project. What the young man didn't see was old man Chen looking out the window at the royal caravan. Chen noticed the horses weren't straining under the weight of gold, the wagons were bouncing lightly as if filled with empty crates. He also noticed that the cousin at the city gate was receiving a small kickback from the mine owner for every person he informed. By the time the insider tip reached the tea house, it wasn't a secret anymore, it was a broadcast. The mine owner needed a crowd to buy his worthless land so he could exit with real cash. When exclusive information finds its way to you, you aren't the inner circle, you are the exit strategy. Real secrets don't travel to tea houses, they stay behind closed doors. If you are hearing it, it's not news. It's an advertisement designed to make you the buyer of someone else's mistake. A new digital library opened in the city square, promising free knowledge for all. No membership fees, no late fines, and no cost for the books. The only requirement was that every reader had to wear a small, lightweight pair of glasses provided by the library to help with eye strain. A young scholar spent months there, reading every scroll for free. He felt he was getting ahead of his peers who had to pay for expensive tutors. He bragged about how he had hacked the system of education without spending a single penny. 1 year later, the scholar went to a merchant to find a job. Before he could speak, the merchant said, "I know you. You prefer history over math, you linger on pages about luxury travel, and you blink rapidly when you see high prices. You aren't a scholar, you are a predictable consumer." The glasses were not for his eyes, they were for the library's owners to track his every thought and desire. Every free hour he spent reading was actually a payment of his personal data and psychological profile. The library sold his habits to the merchants of the city. He realized then that he hadn't been the student, he had been the harvest. In a world where the price tag is zero, your privacy, your focus, and your future choices are the currency being traded. Nothing is more expensive than that which claims to cost nothing. In a dimly lit back room of a bustling port city, a group of wealthy merchants gathered around a mahogany table. They were playing a new game called the Merchant's Venture. The rules were simple. Everyone puts a bag of spice on the table, and a designated dealer shuffles wooden tiles. If your tile matches the cargo coming into the harbor next morning, you double your spices. A young trader named Elias sat at the edge of the table, watching. He saw the merchants laughing, clinking glasses, and boasting about their wins from the previous night. Everyone seemed to be winning. The spices were flowing, and the atmosphere was electric with success. Elias reached for his pouch, ready to join the easy wealth. But then, Elias stopped. He looked at the dealer, a quiet man with steady hands who took a small fee from every single round. Then he looked at the merchants. They were all betting against each other, yet they all claimed to be ahead. Elias began to do the math in his head. If the dealer takes a cut every time, and the house never loses, where is the extra spice coming from? There was no new spice being created, it was just moving in circles, getting smaller with every shuffle. He realized that the wins the merchants bragged about were just their own spices being handed back to them, minus the dealer's fee. The only person truly making a profit was the man shuffling the tiles. Elias pulled his hand back from the table. He realized that in a room full of winners, where no value is being produced, someone has to be the fuel for the fire. If you walk into a deal and can't figure out who is losing money to pay for your guaranteed profit, take a long look in the mirror. You aren't a player at the table, you are the prize the dealer is fighting for. There were two brothers, Cale and Jace, who both inherited a small plot of land. Cale was a man of the new rhythm. He wanted wealth that moved like lightning. He found a merchant who sold thunder seeds, genetically modified grains that promised to grow to full height in just 7 days. "Why wait months for a harvest when you can have it in a week?" the merchant shouted. Cale spent his entire inheritance on these seeds. True to the promise, the green shoots exploded from the earth by day 3. By day 7, the stalks were heavy with grain. Cale was ecstatic. He sold the harvest immediately, doubled his money, and reinvested everything back into more thunder seeds. He felt like a god of finance, mocking his brother Jace, who was still out in the mud, patiently planting traditional wheat that wouldn't be ready for an entire season. But by the third fast harvest, Cale's land began to turn grey. The thunder seeds grew so fast they sucked every nutrient out of the soil, leaving it like dry ash. The fourth crop didn't even sprout, it simply rotted in the dead earth. Worse, the fast money Cale had made had already been spent on a lifestyle he couldn't maintain without the next harvest. He was broke, his land was a desert, and he had no seeds left to plant. Meanwhile, Jace's traditional wheat finally turned gold. It was a slow crawl, but the soil remained rich and the roots were deep. Cale realized too late that fast money is like a flash of gunpowder, bright, loud, and over in a second, leaving nothing but smoke. Real wealth has a heartbeat. It follows the seasons. When someone offers you a shortcut that bypasses the natural time required for growth, they aren't offering you a ladder, they are offering you a cliff. The faster the money comes, the faster it burns the ground you stand on. In a mountain village known for its master weavers, a traveler arrived carrying a box of shimmering, translucent thread. "This is cloud thread," he announced. "It is spun from the mist of the highest peaks. It's invisible to the untrained eye, but creates garments that glow in the dark." He showed them a complex chart of mist cycles and vapor yields, using words the weavers had never heard. Most of the craftsmen were mesmerized. They didn't understand how mist could become thread, but they saw the traveler's fine silk robes and assumed he knew a secret they didn't. They traded their solid hand-spun wool for the invisible cloud thread, hoping to strike it rich selling glowing clothes to the king. Old Master Haku, the oldest weaver in the village, stayed in his shed, working with his rough, honest linen. His grandson asked, "Grandfather, why aren't we buying the cloud thread? Everyone says it's the future of weaving." Haku smiled and handed the boy a shuttle. "If I cannot feel the tension of the thread on my loom, I cannot weave. If I cannot see the fiber, I cannot dye it. If I don't know where it comes from, I don't know when it will break." A month later, the monsoon rains came. The cloud thread garments, which were actually just thin sugar-spun fibers, melted into sticky puddles. The villagers were left with nothing but empty looms and sticky fingers. They had gambled their life's work on a mist they didn't understand. Haku's linen, however, grew stronger with the moisture. Wealth is like a house. If you don't understand how the foundation is poured, you are just a tenant waiting for the roof to cave in. Your cognitive fence isn't a prison, it's a fortification. If you can't explain exactly how the money is made in 3 simple sentences, the money isn't being made, it's being taken from you. The Great Spice Fair was at its peak. For weeks, the price of cinnamon had risen every hour. People were selling their jewelry, their horses, and even their ancestral lands just to buy a single sack of the brown powder, convinced it would be worth double by sunset. The air in the marketplace was thick with a frantic, electric energy. Men were shouting, laughing, and hugging strangers, celebrating their newfound paper wealth. It felt as though the harvest would never end, and the sun would never set on the spice fair. At the very height of the frenzy, a merchant named Silas quietly began loading his empty crates onto his mules. His partner grabbed his arm, eyes wide with greed. "Silas, what are you doing? The price just jumped another 10%. If we stay until tomorrow, we can retire in a palace. Why leave now when the gold is literally falling from the sky?" Silas looked at the crowd, men with bloodshot eyes, screaming for more, ignoring the dark storm clouds gathering on the horizon and the fact that 3 more spice ships had just been spotted entering the harbor which would flood the market. Silas replied calmly, "I have enough. I'd rather be a mile away with a silver coin in my pocket than standing in the center of the square with a mountain of spice I can't sell." He led his mules out of the city gates just as the first raindrops fell. By the next morning, the extra ships had docked, the cinnamon fever broke, and the price crashed to zero. The marketplace was filled with men sitting on sacks of worthless powder, weeping for the fortunes they almost had. Silas was already home, his profit safely tucked away. The hardest part of the game isn't winning, it's stopping. The final copper is always the most expensive one, because to get it, you have to stay until the trap snaps shut. A true master of the game knows that leaving a little money on the table for the next person is the only way to ensure you actually get to keep yours.